RFDS Queensland Section's fleet is kept in the sky by our team of 70 highly skilled pilots. They are all the best at what they do, but their stories and how they came to their careers in aviation are often completely different. Some come from farming backgrounds and have gained their pilot's licence before their driver's licence. Others have had long careers with airlines, and others come to the service after flying for the Royal Australian Air Force. I'm Edwina Stott, this is the RFDS Queensland Section podcast, and in this series we'll hear some of their stories and get to know the pilots who keep the Doctor flying.
My name's Tully, Senior Base pilot at Charleville. So I started with the Flying Doctor on the 19th of May 2014, which I always remember because it was my birthday. It was my very first day with them. So it was just coming up on 6 years since I started at Charleville.
That's Nick Tully, and he's the first pilot we'll hear from in this special series. Nick grew up on a station between Quilpie and Windorah in Western Queensland. As one of 10 children, the Flying Doctor was frequently called upon. Nick now flies for the service in Charleville, close to where he grew up, and he often flies people he's known his entire life. I sat down with Nick to hear more of his story and what it's like to fly for the service.
And growing up on a regional area, we always had, always tearing around motorbikes and had our fair share of accidents. So I think over the years, my immediate family were up to about 8 flyouts with the RFDS.
Is that what made you want to work for the service?
I think so. Once down the track, I made the decision that flying was what I wanted to do. We'd always had a connection with the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and I think growing up in the bush, my two greatest interests in life were aviation and flying and the bush. So to combine the two, I think the RFDS and having that association growing up as well, putting those all together was a pretty easy decision to end up working for the Flying Doctor later on.
So tell me, when you left school and you were deciding what career you wanted to get into, was it an obvious choice to get into aviation, or did you do something else before that?
Yeah, it was an obvious choice. Like a lot of people, I didn't do particularly well at school. I was a very average student and left school not knowing really what I wanted to do. So I stuck with what I knew and headed west back where I grew up. Spent a considerable amount of time as a contract musterer, so working at home and working on stations around the area, mustering sheep for shearing, and when everyone had a busy time, I'd go around and give them a hand.
Wow.
So I did that for a few years, and then I went away and learnt to fly, and I more learnt to fly, so I thought down the track I'd end up on back in the land, and a lot of stations out west had a plane. We had an old Cessna on the station for mustering and for station work, so I thought I'd learn to fly to sort of cover me for that as I progressed in my agricultural career. And then by accident, really, I was offered a job with Consolidated Pastoral Company in the Northern Territory as a station hand / pilot. So I wasn't really there to be a full-time pilot. I was sort of more doing the day-to-day station activities and just filled in the pilot as well. And after 12 months on a property up near Kununurra, they offered to take me down to Newcastle Water Station, which was their head property in the Barkly Tablelands in Northern Territory. And I learned to fly the twin-engine aircraft there, the Baron, which was used by the CEO. And I spent 3 years with them. And by that stage, I was, had the aviation bug had certainly well and truly bitten me. So I thought I would then get my commercial licence and progress. And I was very lucky that CPC put me through my commercial licence then. They said if I hung around a bit longer, they would pay for it. So I did that. And from there moved on to a charter company in Kalgoorlie in Western Australia, which we fulfilled all sorts of roles there. Probably the primary function was doing FIFO charter work out to some mines east of Kalgoorlie in the Great Desert there. And we did all sorts of other things. We actually flew for the clinics for the Flying Doctor out of Kalgoorlie Base. We did a lot of prisoner transfer. We flew a lot of gold around. And we did a lot of servicing to the Aboriginal communities in between Kalgoorlie and Alice Springs. So that was where I sort of built up my twin-engine experience and turbine experience and got me enough experience to move into the Flying Doctor.
Wow. And can you remember the moment or the time in your life when you realised that perhaps being a pilot was the career for you as opposed to a career in agriculture?
During my younger days, and it was 45 degrees, and I was sitting on a motorbike, and I'd been up since 4 o'clock in the morning and bouncing over stones and getting torn by my scrub and chasing sheep. And I thought there's got to be something better than this. And I think that sort of prompted me to then move into aviation, and that's sort of where it progressed from there.
Did you enjoy your first jobs in aviation? Were they as good as what you're expecting?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I loved the Northern Territory particularly. I spent a lot of time mustering up there, sort of following on from my aviation, my agricultural background, so I had a lot of time doing low level, and it was big hours, and it was hard work, but it was a hell of a lot of fun. And mustering really teaches you the basics of how to fly an aeroplane, because you're low and slow all the time. You've got to be particularly careful of what you're doing. And then to progress from there in the Kalgoorlie wasn't too big a step. It was a logical next step, and so we still were in the bush, which I loved, and doing such a varied role there as well, of doing all sorts of different stuff, and was really good. It sort of built on the fundamentals that I already had in place, and going to Kalgoorlie, it just sort of expanded it, and it was a really good experience. I really loved it.
Yeah, I bet. Pretty varied. And so from there, did you decide that you wanted to go to the Flying Doctors? Because I know a lot of young pilots, once they've got their commercial license, they just want to earn enough hours to be able to go and fly commercially for the airlines. Did that ever appeal to you, or did you always know you wanted to work for the Flying Doctor?
No, I always wanted to work for the Flying Doctor. I couldn't see myself in the airlines. I wasn't particularly chasing something that involved doing the same thing on repeat over and over again. So once I chose to follow my profession in aviation, the Flying Doctor was where I ended up. I particularly wanted Charleville Base for the fact that it was close to home, it was close to where I grew up, and still had a lot of family and friends, and it was an area that I knew well. So the thing that really appealed me and still appeals me today in the job that we do is that, one, we get up in the morning, we don't know what's going to happen. There's such variety. And two, it challenges you every day, the RFDS. So, we could be, no two jobs are the same. And the thing I particularly like is we can go out, west of Charleville into a station in the middle of the night, land on a toilet roll, pick someone up who's critically ill, and then 3 hours later we can be doing a precision approach down the ILS into Brisbane. So that challenges, as a pilot, that challenges every aspect of your skill level, from basic hand flying, that's been going on for the last 80 years, blokes at night, no approach, going to somewhere that's very underprepared, and then we get to pick up and head into Brisbane. So that's the main aspect of it that I love.
What was it, though, that really made you want to work for the Flying Doctor? Was it that chance to work in an opportunity that is so different? No 2 days are the same. Is it that variation that attracted you to the Flying Doctor, or do you think it was growing up on the land and seeing how valuable it was?
I think it was probably a combination of everything. The RFDS and the Outback sort of have this intertwined history, and our family has an intertwined history with the RFDS as well. So I think that, combined with the fact that I didn't want to do a job that was the same thing every day. And so, having the ability to go to work and, get tasked to go and do something, and then 4 hours later we're retasked in flight, and, it's an ever-changing challenge. And so that was the main thing that appealed to me for the job.
And do you like it because you, I suppose, would be helping a lot of families like yours?
Yeah, I do. And I love people in the bush. I love their spirit and their resilience, and how tough they are, and their mateship and things like that. And the good thing about Charleville is we're the only base in Queensland that does both clinics and aeromed with the same aircraft. So we spend a lot of time doing clinics. We can get called away as well, but I love doing the clinics and meeting people who are childhood friends who grew up with, and keeping in touch with what's going on in the West. So that really appeals. And then as another challenge, we then do the aeromed stuff on top. So it's a very varied role, and we get to do the whole aspect, which is really great.
So I wouldn't be able to ask you what your typical day's like then, because I suppose there isn't one.
No, not particularly. The clinics run from Tuesday through to Friday. So on a day shift during the week, we know we're going to clinic, hopefully. Sometimes we get tasked for an emergency prior to clinic, and the clinic gets cancelled. But we have a rough idea during Tuesday to Friday what we're doing to the day shift. But even on clinic, regularly we get called away for emergency, especially in the cooler months of the year, where there's a lot of tourists and a lot of visitors in the outback. So there's quite a lot more higher percentage of flights we do during those cooler months. There's a lot more accidents. So we just come into work on a day shift. If it's a clinic day, we get the plane ready at 6 a.m. We start, get the plane ready to depart at 7:15, and we'll head out, spend the day there, and come back home. Planning to depart the clinic about 4:30 to get back home at 5:30. But otherwise, we're just on call. We'll head in the morning, do the daily inspection of the aircraft, make sure it's safe for flight, and then we might get tasked for a job, and we then might be retasked 3 or 4 times during the day as well to go, to divert to other places and pick up people and all sorts of things. So.
Wow. And given that your role is so varied, how can you prepare for that? I know obviously you have rigorous training and that kind of thing, but are there certain things that you do to ensure that you are ready?
Yeah, a bloke once told me up north when I was flying up there, he said, always prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So I think there's ways to prepare it, and we're very lucky now as well. We have an EFB, which is an electronic flight bag, the iPad, so all our flight planning can be done on the run. Once upon a time it wasn't that easy, so we have all the information at our fingertips. That certainly helps us, especially when we're in flight. And I think there's little tips, we, as a general rule, we never go past a fuel stop without topping up, just in case. So if we do get diverted in flight, we have fuel on board to go where we need to. And I think having a pretty solid understanding of Western Queensland, which I do because I grew up here, so I know where the stations are and where the towns are and how far everything is from. And so that sort of helps me to prepare as well. But I think always just prepare for the unexpected in a worst case scenario. So if something does come in, you're generally pretty well covered because you're planned for the worst.
And it's often said when you're a pilot for the RFDS, you're not just a pilot. Obviously you work very closely with your flight nurse and whoever you're working with in the aircraft. Do you enjoy that closeness of that team and also, that extra responsibility of actually having to often help with area med rescues?
Yeah, the team aspect, especially at a little base like ours, is a huge aspect of what we do. And if you don't work together as a team, your outcome is never as good as it should be. So we're very lucky to have quite a close-knit team. And it's challenging at times when you are quite often the third set of hands. So if we are at a little country hospital or something like that, or something gets forgotten, or they need an extra set of hands to shift patients and move patients from stretchers to stretchers and all that sort of stuff, or hold stuff, or record things down, and so you're a bit of a gopher. You can end up in any role as the pilot, and often you're running back to the plane to get more gear and stuff and supplies and back in, and so it's you're a part of the team, and if you don't work together as a team, you'll never have we will have a good outcome, but it often is not as easy and as smooth as it should be.
And do you have any particular memorable days? Does any day stand out as, wow, I can't believe that happened, or that was phenomenal?
Yeah, we've had a few over the years, and it's funny, like a lot of things, a lot of the jobs are fairly routine, and then every now and then you'll have one job in particular which stands out and just reinforces why we do what we do. And we've had a couple in Charleville. We had one quite recently which has become a famous case, and it was on a night shift, and we'd been out to Windorah to pick up a patient and come back to Charleville, and we're dropping them at the Charleville base. And as we're coming into Charleville, we got a call on the sat phone, and they said, we have a patient in Charleville that needs to go to Toowoomba. And I was chatting to the nurse, and I said, what's wrong with him? And he had a stick in his leg. That's all we got. That was the only information we had. He's got a stick in his leg. And I thought, okay, no worries, this sounds pretty routine. He turned up, and he was a farmer who that day had been, with the drought going on in Western Queensland, had been out pushing mulga trees in his dozer to feed his stock and the bulldozer. And he had driven over this enormous old dead tree which had flicked up into the cabin of the bulldozer, and it fell across the steering clutches in front of him, so he couldn't pull the clutches out to stop the bulldozer. And a big stick about an inch in diameter started going through his leg. He sat there and watched it, and it went through his thigh and went halfway through his other leg. And finally it lifted him up out of the seat, and then the stick finally broke, and he fell back into the seat, and he managed to get the sticks off the clutches and pull it up. And so he came out the ambulance, this guy, and I was having a yarn to him, and I knew him. And so I said, what happened? And he went through and told me, and he said, you wouldn't believe what I did. He said, I pulled the dozer up and finally stopped. And I had a look, and there was a lot of blood. And he said he took his shirt off and tied it around one of his legs, which was bleeding quite profusely. So there wasn't the one with the stick in it. It was the leg that had gone half in and come back out. And he said, I'm a silly bugger. He said, I should have taken the bulldozer over to the car, but I got out and I walked. And he walked a K back to his car with this, a couple of foot long stick, like branch through his leg. And then he got in the car and drove 10 Ks home, and he got on the phone to his wife and he said, can you please call the ambulance? And the ambulance went down. It was about 60 Ks south of town, and picked him up and brought him back. And I said to the ambulance guys, I said, what was he like when you got there? And they said, you wouldn't believe it, you're sitting down having a cup of tea. And they said, mate, what's your pain? And he said, oh, it's about a 4 out of 10. You hear these stories of the RFDS over the years of these quintessential bushmen who are so tough, who just refuse any sort of treatment. And I hadn't really come across anything till that night. And so this guy came in. He wanted to walk on the aeroplane. We actually had to talk him into stretching him on. And the only time I knew he was in pain, that he wasn't letting on, was he said, whatever you do, don't touch the stick. And I said, mate, fair enough, I won't go near it. We'll try not to bump it at all while we're loading. But that was a particularly memorable one. I've never, ever seen anyone that was tough like that fella.
And is he okay now, do you know?
He was fine. We dropped him off at Toowoomba. He had the stick removed in surgery, and a week later he was back home.
Wow. I mean, I know bush people are tough, but that's next level.
It was quite phenomenal. There's some people, especially the older generation, are very, very tough, and they hate to put anyone out. And we went to another case where a gentleman had fallen. He was 87, had fallen over in the middle of the night and broken his hip. And it didn't ring the ambulance till 6 a.m. because he didn't want to put anyone out at 2 a.m. So some tough people get around out in the bush.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. And so you've been with the Flying Doctor now since 2014, so for 5 years, coming up on 6, I suppose, in May. Has it lived up to your expectations? Is it as good as you thought it would be?
It certainly is. You have a preconceived idea in your head of what it's going to be like, and I never had anything to do with the medical field at all before I started, so I was a bit naive to it all. But it's funny, like I said, a lot of it's fairly routine at times, and you think, oh, this is all a bit ho-hum, and just as it starts to get a little bit boring, something will happen where you will make you save a life. It's a sort of a life-changing sort of mission where you go out and do something that's really critical and get into Brisbane, and you get home, and you think, oh, that was, of all the routine flights I've done over the years, that certainly makes up for it. I can't see that changing. I think that'll continue through the rest of my career, and at no stage I have at the moment do I wish to go anywhere else. I've certainly set up a shop in Charleville, and I don't really intend to go anywhere at the moment. It's a wonderful job, and it's a wonderful place to live.
Do you think it's changed you as a person working for the RFDS?
I think it has. It's changed me a lot. I was only 28 when I started, and it's opened my eyes to a lot of things and exposed me to a lot of things, and not bad things by any means, but even working in the communities and talking to people and seeing how hard people are doing it. It's been drought out here for a long time, and there's a lot of people that are under financial stress and doing it tough, and you see these guys day in, day out, and you see how resilient, how tough they are, and it's quite inspiring. And when they come in and see us and have a chat, and they go away and they just go day in, day out, and one day it'll rain and things will turn around, but it's been a fantastic job. I'm certainly a better person for having the experience over the last 6 years.
What is the most challenging part of the job? What do you think is the hardest part of what you do?
Good question. I think every person would say something different. Every pilot would say something different. Some of the really critical cases that we do are hard, and I think now I had my little son. My boy's only 4 months old, and I think that's certainly changed my perspective to it as well. And any case where you go to that's children involved, and especially now since I've had my own child, I find it certainly changed my perspective, and I find it quite hard. And I think that human interaction at times where a lot of the people we help, you're helping them on the worst day of their life, and you have this very short interaction with them, and we don't follow up on them again after that sometimes. Like, you don't know what's happened to them. And I find that hard. So I always always ask the doctor, and might be a week later, how was that person and how things went. But when you have a terrific outcome, it's fantastic. But unfortunately, not all outcomes are terrific. And I just think dealing with that, like any person who's in an emergency occupation, just dealing with that trauma and things that you see is probably the hardest part of the job. But thankfully, it doesn't happen too often.
Do you think it's fair to say that when you're a pilot for the RFDS, you're so much more than just a pilot?
You are, to a degree. Sometimes you're the only one that's free. So if we are at a case and there's parents and family, which there often is, the doctor and the nurse are busy doing what they need to do. So quite often you're the one left behind. So sometimes you play the counsellor, you play the extra set of hands, drive the ambulance. I've done all sorts of things over the years. I remember once we were at Blackall doing a case, and the doctor couldn't get the ultrasound to work, so I ended up having to take my shirt off and he did a practice ultrasound on me, which at the time we thought was a bit inappropriate between staff members. But anyway, the job needed to get done, so we did it. And I guess that's a good part about being a pilot as well, is you get to do all this sort of stuff and have a real varied role in what you do. You're not just flying the aeroplane.
It is obviously incredibly varied, but what's your favourite part? What do you love most?
I love going out to the clinics, and I have a couple of favourite clinics that I go to and just sitting around and having a cup of tea and yelling to people and being from the bush as well. We always talk about the weather's obviously top of the list at the moment because it's been dry for so long, and just talking about what's going on and what property sold for what, and who ashore, how many wall bales they got last week. And I love getting back into the bush communities and just catching up on news and having a yarn to each other and talking about such and such got flown out last week, and the Bush Telegraph is phenomenal. They know exactly what's going on and finding out how everyone's getting on. And I love that aspect of it. I love getting out there and just catching up and being part of all these communities that we service.
And what's it like living in Charleville? I mean, I know you're from that area and you're a regional boy anyway, but what's it like living in such a small community?
Look, I don't know any better because I've always grown up and I've always lived in the bush. Ever since I left home, I've still always been in a regional town, and I think Charleville's a fantastic place. It's not particularly big, but we're big enough. It's 2,500 people, and people talk of the isolation, but we're only a 7-hour drive from Charleville. From Brisbane, and there's a flight every day to Brisbane, and so I think we're actually reasonably well serviced, and we have a good hospital, and there's plenty of services in town, and everyone knows each other, and you can have this as a good or a bad thing, but when you live in a little town, everyone knows your business. But having said that, if anything ever happens or you ever need a hand or anything like that, people will fall over themselves to come and try and help you. And when we had our little boy back in July, the amount of people that helped us out and cooked for us and looked after the house while we were away, and they're just fantastic. The community support, but you don't get that in a bigger centre. It's humbling to be part of. It's a really good little community.
When we were talking earlier, you mentioned that you have a phenomenally 10 siblings. Have any of them gone into aviation or medicine or followed in your footsteps?
My father flies. My mum learnt to fly when she was pregnant with me, which I think probably passed on my aviation genes.
Wow, she learnt to fly when she was pregnant with you?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not sure what made her do that, but I think she was always worried that flying around with Dad, if something happened to Dad, no one could land the plane with all the kids in it, so she learnt to fly as well. My eldest brother flies. He's a vet. And we have 3 other boys in my family fly as well. So none commercially. They all have their private licences. So 6 of us end up learning to fly, but none of us ended up in the medic field. My eldest brother's a vet. That's as close as we got.
So tell me, your dad learnt to fly. Did he learn to fly much in the same way you did, as part of that agricultural business and taking care of that kind of side of things?
Yeah, he did. My dad's, he's mad about aeroplanes and always has been. He's got a... I love aviation, but I've got nothing on my father. He just reads plane book after plane book, and anything about aircraft he knows. And same thing, he didn't learn to fly until he was 42, and the same thing, he was bouncing around on a motorbike in the Stones, and he'd bought more country, and it was getting too hard to muster just on motorbike alone. So he thought we're going to have to get an aeroplane. So he learned to fly in his early 40s and bought a Cessna. And he's 76 now. He's retired from the station, but he's still got his plane, and he flies backwards and forwards between Kingaroy and Quilpie, and he loves it. And I think I don't know what he's going to do with his aeroplane, but he'll die with it, I think.
Just loves it. And your mum learnt to fly. How old was your mum when she learnt to fly?
So mum was 39, so it must have been around the same time as Dad. Just after Dad learned to fly, mum learned to fly as well.
How fantastic. And what do they make of you being a pilot for the Flying Doctor?
I mean, anyone that flies a plane is good in Dad's books. So Dad really loves it. He comes out and often take them through the plane and have a look around and what's going on. And I think that they're grateful that the Flying Doctor has helped them so much over the years. So it's good that someone in our family is giving back. We've got a lot to give back. We have a lot to owe the Flying Doctor, and I think they're proud that are involved and we're giving back to something that gave us so much.
Do you think that's part of the satisfaction of working for the Flying Doctor? The fact that you're not just getting a paycheck, you actually are putting something in and you're getting something back.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. It's nice to be able to, to give a bit back, and like I said, give back to something that's given us so much. My father had a plane crash in 2001, and I had one of my brothers brothers came off a motorbike and had a very nasty head injury in 2004, and both of those cases, if it wasn't for the RFDS, we would have lost both those two. So I think it's, I don't want that to happen to anyone else. So I think it's good knowing that, you still have that service out west, and hopefully we're able to prevent anything like that happening. I certainly don't want anyone else to happen, what we had to go through as a family, and I think it's a wonderful to be able to give back. It's certainly at the end of the day makes it far more worthwhile.
So what would you say to anybody else who is at the beginning of their career in flying and they were thinking about maybe taking a career in the RFDS?
Certainly don't discount it if you don't like doing the same thing every day. You want world-class training. We fly fantastic, well-equipped aeroplanes, and the variety in our work is challenging work. We're going out doing things that the average person doesn't get to do, and I think if you like a challenge and you like to test your skills and you want to build on your foundations that you start at flying school, I think the Royal Flying Doctor is a fantastic career path to follow, and it's very rewarding, and it's something that I don't think many people ever get sick of. It's something that you'll stick with for the rest of your career. Everyone says, when you leave school, you find something you enjoy, you'll never work a day in your life, and I know a lot of people probably don't get to really experience that, but I was very, very lucky. Once I started, this is where I was meant to be, and I really, really do enjoy it.
And do you hope that your boy, I know he's only 4 months old, but do you hope that he gets into aviation in the same way that you and your dad have?
Well, I hope so. I was only saying that to my wife Sarah the other day. I said, I'm 33 now. If I stay healthy, I've got to 65. So I've got an RFDS at 28. So I was saying to Sarah, we might be able to overlap the last 5 years of our careers. We can work together.
Hey, how really, cool really would that be?
He's going to be, he's going to be spammed with aeroplanes anyway. So if he doesn't end up flying aviation, I'll be surprised.
That's Nick Tully, RFDS Queensland Section's Senior Base pilot for Charleville. His story is the first in a series of podcasts telling the stories of our pilots and how they came to work for the service. If you'd like to see Nick in his natural habitat, head to our website where you'll find a short video of him working at the Charleville base. Just search RFDS Queensland Podcast. The rest of the podcast will be released in February, so make sure you subscribe on your favourite podcasting app so you don't miss any of these fascinating stories. You'll hear from a woman who spent 12 years in the Royal Australian Air Force, a former long-haul Qantas pilot, and a man who dropped out of his engineering degree to chase his dreams of sitting in the left-hand seat. I'm Edwina Stott, and this is the RFDS Queensland Section podcast. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you next time.